Wildwood Cottage, and welcome back to a very wet spring Wales. It hasn't stopped raining, you know, for the last couple of weeks, at least 2 or 3 weeks. We've had the odd nice day in between where we've had a nice glorious day of sunshine, which was earlier in the month. We had a beautiful day early on this week. But other than that, it's just been rain, and it's not really very warm either. So I'm in a nice warm jumper with over my hands because I'm feeling a little bit cold. So how are you all doing today? I hope you're all doing well. I hope you're having a good week and that everything is going well for you. I hope wherever you are you've managed to see some sunshine, but I haven't. You look a little bit today. I don't think my tripod's straight, but never mind, I can't be bothered starting again, so you just have to see me a little bit sideways instead. If I turn this way it mightn't look so bad, might it? But yeah, so today I thought that I would do a different type of video and ways in which you can do a pond and a bog garden with just plants from your garden. Because I don't know whether you've seen the video that's already gone up, but I've been doing a pond outside the front door. And I'm really pleased with it. It's cost me nothing, absolutely nothing. I had the plastic in the garage, I already had the stones, I already had the plants. I got them off a customer when I was doing my gardening job many years ago. And yeah, I've got a lot of the plants from around the garden, and the leaves that are on top were free as well from the garden next door. So yeah, the whole thing cost me nothing. And I thought I'd encourage you that you can have a wildlife pond as well. And it doesn't have to cost you a lot of money. My original pond that I did have outside the door just was made out of an old painter's bucket off an old emulsion tub that my husband had. And I just put a piece of plastic in it and an old scrap piece of pond liner that I had from my allotment 15 years ago. And I just put that in, and it's worked really well. Do you know, I've never seen such a big frog. I was convinced it was a toad, but then I managed to pick him up and he was lovely and smooth on the top, and then he jumped out my hand and hopped to the pond and jumped in the pond. So I'm convinced now he's a frog. But you know, his legs were that long behind his body. His body must have been a bit small, little bit smaller than my hand, and his legs were that long that they actually touched the bottom of the pond. I could see them going all the way down into the mud at the bottom of the pond. And the pond's a good 12 inches deep. Now they were stretched out, his legs, while he was just sitting there looking at me as if to say, thanks for the pond, missus. But I've never seen such a big frog. Now my husband said to me this morning, maybe he's heard the news about your new pond and he's decided to move in. So maybe that's the case, because I did have a pond, a frog originally in the little painter's bucket, but he was nowhere near as big as that. And he hopped out from behind the pots yesterday as if to say, what you doing to me, woman, you're tidying up. So yeah, everything's all nice and tidy out there. So I might pop a little picture in at the end for you and show you what the pond looks like. But yeah, so today we're talking about filling it for free. Because I'm sure you've got plenty of plants in your own garden, or you know somebody who's got particular plants in their garden that you can use in the pond. So I've been using this book, and it's called Rock and Water Garden Expert, and it's a D&G Hessian book. I've got loads of these garden expert books. I pick them up in the charity shop for about 99p. And my cheapest one that I bought back in 2002, I think it was a penny. I got it in Wilkinson's and it had 99% off. For some reason it had 99% off and it was a penny. So that was the cheapest book, and I've still got it. It's fallen to bits, but I got that before I got my allotment, when I put my name on the waiting list for the allotment. And yeah, that was the first gardening book that I got in this series. So yeah, so it's definitely worth picking them up in the charity shop. As I say, they can be 99p, so they're really good. But it tells you all about how to do a water garden, how to plant through propagating plants, garden maintenance, weeds and things that you need to be careful of. Rock plants, it talks to you all, it gives you a good comprehensive list of rockery plants. There's that many rockery plants. It goes from page, let's see, page 11 to page 49 just in rockery plants. So there's a good 30 odd pages of rockery plants, and there's about 2 or 3 to a page. So it's a really, really good book. I am planning a rockery as well. The bit above where the pond is just a rock of slate. Now there is a few deep pockets that I have planted things like an azalea and a fuchsia. I've got some heathers there. There was already some heathers there which are just wild heathers, but I have planted 3 of my own heathers, and they were 99p in the garden centre. I always, whenever I go to the garden centre, just a free throwaway tip for you, I always make my way to the sale bin first. Before I buy anything in the garden centre full price, I always head to the sale bin and find any plants, look at all the plants that they've got in that sale bin, because quite often they'll throw things in there like perennials that have just died off at the top, and they'll come back. Oftentimes they do it in the autumn when they're finished propagating plants, and they throw the old plants into that sale bin, and there's nothing wrong with them. It just means they've exhausted the life of propagating from them, but there's nothing wrong with them. You'll still get a good few years out of them. Sometimes you can get them for as cheap as 50p. I mean, I got some phlox a couple of years ago and they were 50p, and they're still growing. I got oh, what was the other one? Is it petunia? No, it's not a petunia. Can't remember the name of it, but anyway, I got it for my silver wedding anniversary. I bought it when we went out for the day, and that was 99p, and that's growing really well. It's come back again this year. I think I showed you that in one of my garden vlogs recently, the one in March, but I'll show you again when I do my garden vlog this week. But yeah, so there's definitely cheap ways in which you can get plants really, really cheap for your garden. But that's just my free throwaway tip. Always go to the sale bin, always head over there first, because oftentimes they'll put things in there that there's not really anything wrong with them. They're just not saleable at full price, so they'll put them in there. Sometimes if we've had a really hot summer, a lot of the leaves have died back and they're not really saleable, but they'll come back next year. So always head over there first and have a look. I mean, I came away one day from one of my garden centres around here, and I spent about £8, and I had about 40 or 50 quid's worth of plants. So it's definitely worth it, and they're all still growing in the garden. There's nothing wrong with them. So yeah, always head over to there first. The one thing I would say to be careful of is azaleas, because I have found that once the leaves have fell off them and they've struggled, they don't come back. And I have wasted money doing that in the past, and I won't buy them again. I saw one the other day when I was in Morrison's, and all the leaves have fell off, and it looked like it was struggling. I thought, £1.50, do you know, it's not really worth it. I don't think it's going to come back, and if it does, I think it's going to struggle, because I've got azaleas in the garden where the leaves fell off last year during that hot summer that we had, that hot weather, and they just haven't really recovered properly. So I'm not really thinking I want to spend my money on that. But if it's something that's a perennial that dies back under the ground in the winter anyway, then it's definitely worth buying it. If it's 50p a pound, it's definitely worth it. I mean, if it doesn't come back, you've lost nothing, have you? But you will get a really good plant out of it. I've still got plants in the garden that I bought like 10 years ago, and they've been bargain plants. I've got jasmine. It's got a little tiny pink flower on it. The bees absolutely love it. It was £1. It was shoved in the corner. Bought that 20 years ago. I've got it on the barn wall at the back. Still growing, still got green on it. It's looking a bit dead at the moment. It needs sorting out, but there's still some green shoots there. It had flowers on it last year. So you just never know. You just never can tell. I did have 2 of them. I have divided it in the past. I put it around different gardens. I divided it in my old garden and spread it around the neighbours. I had it on my allotment. I had it in the yard in my old house before we moved to Wales, and it's still going strong in the back. So yeah, if you can find bargain plants, really do consider them before you pay full price, and you can definitely fill your garden really, really cheap. So that aside, today we are looking at plants for the pond. Now I've done really, really well. I did buy a plant yesterday, but kind of on purpose by accident. My husband needed me to top up his Amazon order so he could get free postage. So I put a plant in there, but I forgot to put it in there. Went through the checkout and it was still in there, and he didn't need to be in there, but I've got it now anyway. But it's like a bamboo grass, like a reed grass, but it's got like a variegated stem, and I believe the dragonflies absolutely love it. And that's a marginal plant, and that goes at the edge of the pond, because when you have plants in your pond, you have your deep water plants, which I've got a water lily, not a water lily, a flag iris, and I've got that in a pot in some soil in that deep part of the pond, and then that'll grow up really, really tall. So I've got that because the frogs like to sit actually in the tub, so they don't have to sit in the deep water. I find some frogs like to do that, and they a lot of the frogs that I've had in ponds in the past like to lay their spawn actually in the pot and not in the water for some reason. Maybe it's just not as deep for them. But anyway, yeah, when you have a pond, you have your deep water plants, you have your water plants that float on the surface of the water, like duckweed and frog bit, that little green leaf that floats on the top of the surface, and you see the frog pop his head through them. Yeah, they're called floaters. You have your oxygenators that go under the water, and they actually pump oxygen into the water. Now, I've never bothered with them, and I've never had any problems. So you can buy them, you can't buy them, it's entirely up to you. I might get some because this is a slightly bigger pond and it's not going to have fish in it. But, do you know, I've never bothered in the past and I've never had any problems. But, you know, I may get them, we'll see. But yeah, so you have your oxygenators actually in the pond, and that just allows pond life like water skaters and snails and newts and things like that to hide in the undergrowth inside the pond. So that you've got that, and then around the edge where you have your shallow bits, you have what's called your marginals, and they actually sit in pots in the water, but they're not in deep water. So the top of their pot sits just above the water, just on the water surface, and then the plant is above the water surface. So they're called marginals. And then around the edge of your pond you have what's called your boggy bit. You don't have to have a boggy bit, but it's nice to have one, because when the pond overflows, when you have a lot of rain like we're having at the moment, it can continue to fill up, and then the water will spill over the sides, and that's what's called your boggy bit. Now, that is lovely when it's planted up, because the plants do really, really well. So you want plants that don't mind having their feet wet and constantly having their feet wet, because you'll find it won't dry out. It didn't dry out all summer last year, and it did really, really well. So you don't want things that don't like to have their feet wet. You don't want things like lavenders and things like that in there, because they'll just struggle. But what you can put in there is things like flag irises, marigolds, so all sorts of different things like that, things that don't mind having their feet wet, and a bit like a duck to water, they don't mind being in the water. So when you're considering what plants you're going to buy, considering whether you want to have a boggy bit or not, because if you don't, then you might struggle with having a pond, especially the pond that I've done, because it will flood over the sides. So I know it'll constantly have wet patches around the outside of the pond. So I can tailor make the plants to go in those areas that'll do really, really well in those areas. And then as you get further away from the pond, the drier the soil will be. So you can then plan things that don't mind having their feet wet but don't like sitting in water. You can have them around the actual edge of the area where the pond is. So that's just a whistle stop of a pond and pond plants for the pond. So I've gone through my book here when I was doing my pond, and I picked out some plants that I know I've got in the garden that I can use in the pond. So that's what I thought I'd share with you today. So one of the first plants that I've got is this one. Now this is one I showed you in my greenhouse the other day. It's called a lobelia. And it comes in a red and it comes in a blue. Now I've got the blue, and I've got about 16 of these. Now I've just found in this book that it doesn't mind sitting in water, so it can be a marginal plant in the shallow part of your pond, and it can also be a bog plant in the wet bit around the outside of the pond. So I'm going to put 2 of these in. I'm going to put one in the boggy bit and one in the pond itself, and see how it does. So that's your first one. It comes in a red and it also comes in a blue. Now in this book it says that the blue one should be in the boggy bit and the red one should be in the pond. But then it says in the write-up about the red lobelia that it doesn't actually like sitting in water. So I don't know. So I'm going to try it and see how I get on. But I'm going to use 2 blue because I haven't got a red. I did buy a red 2 years ago. I had one summer house, it died, didn't come back. Don't know why. Maybe the weather was too dry when I put it in. Maybe the soil was too dry. Maybe it didn't get enough rain. No idea, but it didn't come back. So the next one is a marsh marigold. You might have seen this in big ponds. It has a big green leaf and a big yellow flower, probably about 2 inches across the whole, from edge to edge of the flower. It's a beautiful flower. It looks a little bit like a hypenicum flower, but it's not. It's a marigold. And the bees love it. And I've had marsh marigolds in this pond before, and I've still got the plants, and they're just starting to flower now. They're just starting to form the flower. So I'll show you that in a garden tour when they come out. But yeah, once you've got one, you can then divide them and divide them. I've got 3 ponds with them in now. I've got a bucket outside the door here, a bucket outside the front door, and then I've got them in the new pond as well. So they're really good value for money. If you buy a small piece or get some off a neighbour, by next year you'll be dividing it up. It's a really, really good plant. The next one is a carex grass, which is this one here, and this one here. And it's a really nice grass, but I don't like grasses in my garden. I've got enough grass to think about with the lawnmower, but you can use carex as a marginal if you've got a big enough pond. But because my pond is only small, I think a carex might be a bit too big for the pond that I've got, because my pond is only just over 1 metre long by about 2 foot wide, something like that, and then 12 inches deep. So it's only a smallish pond, so I don't want to overcrowd it with too many plants, because I want the frogs and the newts and things like that to move in. So I think the carex is going to be too big. I quite like the cotton grass, which has like little cotton tufts on the top of it. You see it on the marshes and the bogs in the wild. I'll put a picture here for you. It's a lovely plant. It looks like little tufts of cotton. Little tufts of wool, like a sheep's walked past and left the wool on the top of the grass. So I quite fancy that one, so I might invest in a little bit of that, unless I can find somebody who's got some. Irises are very popular. I've got yellow flag iris. Again, there's a picture here for you. But you can also use the blue flag iris as well. I did have some of them, but you know, they were in the bag that long, they rotted down and became compost. I completely forgot about them. And they just never got planted in the other garden. Somebody gave me a big bag full, but as I say, I didn't get round to planting them. They all rotted down, they went to compost, but they ended up going back on the garden as compost, but just never as flag irises. But I have got the yellow ones, and they're really, really pretty, they're really lovely. And also the tubers, when the plant gets too big, I can take a piece out, put that back in the pond, and then the rest of it I can use in the dye pot to dye wool. So that's why I've got that one, because I think it's a good investment for me. I've got quite a bit of it, so I might see about putting a piece in the 2 ponds that I've got out the front and the back, and see if I can grow that in there. These, by the way, are marginals. These are ones that will sit actually in the pond. Oh yeah, another one is tansy. Now I didn't know about this one. I grow tansy as, again, a picture here. I grow tansy as a dye plant. It's got called golden buttons because of the yellow flowers that it has on the top. Now I grow this in the perennial border, so I'm thinking of dividing it and taking a piece out and popping it in the pond and see how it does in the pond. It might do well, it might not, but we'll just have to see. So again, tansy. It's a good medicinal plant as well. I don't know what its uses are, but people grow it in the herb garden and have done for hundreds of years as a medicinal plant. But yeah, I believe it's not toxic either, but the bees will love it. And the hoverflies as well, because it's got an open flower on the top, and they can come in and land on the top like a landing pad, and they really, really like it. So that's that one. So that's the end of the marginals, I think, of what you can grow from the garden. I think it's a bulrush that I've just ordered off the internet, but I'm not sure. If we find a photograph of it, I'll pop it in for you. Right, I think that was it for the marginals. Oh, Veronica is another one. I bought this as a cheap plant in the garden centre. I think it was 50p. And it's still going really, really well in the garden. And I found it the other day and I thought I must put some of that in the pond because I really, really love the flower. It's got a beautiful flower on it. So yeah, Veronica as well. You can grow that as a marginal actually in the water. So that's really good. But what you will need is a pond tub. Now what they have is like a perforated outside to them, while an ordinary plant pot only has the holes in the bottom. A pond one has holes all the way around the pot itself. You can get them in different shapes. You can get square ones, round ones, you can get kidney shaped ones, so you can have quite a few plants in one pot. But I don't use them. I just use ordinary plant pots because the water's going to get up from the bottom anyway. But you can invest in the ordinary pots if you want to. They are available on eBay. I think you get about 5 for £3 on eBay. Maybe I'll invest in them at some point. But you know, you could always just stick holes in your ordinary plant pots in the sides and do it that way. So yeah, heat up a knitting needle or something and just skewer the sides, and that will sort that out. So that's your marginal plants. The next thing I was going to show you was bog plants. Now these sit around the outside of the pond, around the edge of the pond, where you're going to get the overflow of the water coming out when it rains, and it'll overflow over the sides. So these are the plants that don't mind sitting in the wet. Now the first one is called goat's beard. Now I've got this, again a picture here, I've got this in my garden. Old Gordon, the elderly gentleman that lived here, planted it. And the last 2 years we've been here, it has been full of bees. I mean full of bees. You walk past it and the whole bush is buzzing. It grows about this tall, probably about 5 or 6 foot tall. I'm 5'5" and it was taller than me with the flowers. And it's got like a limey white coloured flower on it. It's beautiful. Again, there's a picture here. And yeah, it just buzzing, absolutely buzzing with hoverflies, bumblebees, honeybees. It's just one of those sort of hungry gap flowers that the bees absolutely go bonkers for. Now it does grow big, so I would only recommend growing this one if you've got a large space to put it. As I say, it grows perfectly well in my garden, in the vegetable garden. It doesn't get all that wet. And I'm sure you'll know someone who's got one. You'll recognise it when you see it. It's absolutely beautiful. And it's just started getting shoots on it at the bottom now. So in the next month or so, it'll go boom and it'll be full of bees. So yeah, it's similar to the astilbe. It's not the same family, I don't think. The goat's beard is called a runcus. But the next one was a astilbe. Now I have got that all over my garden. I've got a purple one, a pink one and a white one. So I'm thinking of putting the purple and the pink, one in the water and one on the edge, because I do believe that you can grow them as marginals as well. So I'm going to try that. I won't let it die, honestly, I won't let it die. If I see it struggling in the water, I'll take it out and pop it somewhere else in the garden. But I'm going to grow it as a marginal, a bog plant around the edge, if there's space, because I've got that much crammed in there at the moment, I may not have space. But yeah, so astilbe, it has a little frothy flower on it, as you can see in the picture, and it probably grows about 1 metre tall, I would think, in good conditions, maybe 3 foot. So yeah, and it'll spread the same as well. And the good thing about this book is it tells you how to grow it, how tall it's going to get, how wide it's going to get, the best conditions to plant it in, how to look after it. So yeah, it's a really good book to get if you can. So that's the astilbe. The next one was a hosta. Now hostas do go really, really big, so I would only grow a hosta if you've got a big space to put it. But alternatively, you could take a little cutting off one of your existing plants, pop that in, and when it gets too big, dig it up, divide it, pop a little bit back in, and you'll still be able to have the effect of the hosta without it getting too big. But for me, I just think I'd rather see flowers than a hosta. But yeah, you can grow a hosta. It's called a plantain lily, apparently, the hostas. And they can grow to a height of 1.5 feet to 3 feet. So, and they'll spread about 2 foot. So as I say, they do get quite clumpy, quite big. But if you're prepared to take it up when it gets too big and divide it, it's well worth putting in. So again, irises you can plant as a bog garden plant. Any iris you've got, as long as it doesn't have the bulb that sits on the top of the soil. You want the type that has its roots under the soil, and then you know it's going to be okay. But if the bulb grows on the surface of the soil, they prefer dry conditions rather than boggy conditions. And I found that out by mistake last year. I planted a whole bed of irises thinking they all love boggy conditions. The ones that sit on the top struggled, The other ones did really well. So yeah, you always find out by accident, don't you? So yeah, irises, great bog plants. As I say, make sure it's either the flag iris or the ones that root underneath the soil, and they'll be perfectly fine. Again, lobelia, as I said before, you can grow it in the water, out of the water, but you want the cardinal one. You don't want the ordinary fancy cottage garden lobelia. You want one called the Lobelia Cardinals, which is this one that I showed you before, £2.29 in Morrison's. So yeah, you can get quite a lot cheap if you want to. The other one is Hemerocallis. Now, I didn't know about this one. I love daylilies. I've got loads of them in the garden. The lady I used to work for who gave me the pond plants had tons of daylilies. She had a massive border full of them, probably about 3 metres across by 1 metre deep of daylilies. And they don't flower that long, for about a month. But they spread quite quickly. But they are really nice plants. If you grow them in a pot, you could maybe put the pot in the soil so they don't get too big, and then you can still enjoy the flowers on the top. But yeah, daylilies are lovely. So if you have got enough space and you are building a decent sized pond, consider daylilies. I'm sure you've got them in your garden. Hemerocallis is the plant name for them. What else did I get out of? These are just things that I got out of my garden that I've put in my pond area. So you may have different plants that you think may do well, but these are just things that I had in my garden. Mimulus. Now, I didn't know mimulus were bog plants, but apparently they are. The monkey flower, it's called. So they are low growing. They like rockeries. So yeah, they grow into 6 to 9 inch mounds. So they'd be really nice. I might see if I can get some of them for next year. But I just wanted to see what I could do for free without having to buy anything. With this cost of living crisis and that we're all going through, it's nice just to see what you can do for free before you go spending loads of money. I know a lot of people are struggling at the moment, and I don't want to be a channel that encourages people to go out and spend money. I want to encourage you to do what you can for free from what you've already got. So the last one, I think the last one is called a kaffir lily. Now, I have lots of this because the elderly gentleman planted it everywhere. I've got a red one, I've got a pink one, and I've got a cerise pink one. Now, I didn't know there was so many of them. I'm sure there's lots more. But I'm going to take a cutting off each one and pop that in the soil as well. But they are bog plants. I don't know whether they'll grow in the water. It doesn't actually say. They are miniature gladiolus. They look like the mini gladiolus or Hemerocallis, the daylily. So yeah, again, I'll put a picture here for you. But yeah, it's a lovely plant. So that's just a few of the plants that I managed to find in my garden that meant that I could do my pond for free. It's amazing when you start looking around the garden just how many plants you've actually got that you can use. I didn't realise how many of my actual plants in the garden would be suitable for the pond. All the plants that have been there over the years, and I didn't know that they were suitable for a pond. So, and it means now that I've managed to do my pond, and I've done it, I think I've done it really nice. I think it's turned out really well. It's a lot better than the painter's bucket, and it cost me absolutely nothing apart from that one plant that I left in my husband's basket on Amazon by mistake. So yeah, anyway, I'm looking forward to that plant coming, and I'm looking forward to seeing the plants grow and seeing the wildlife move in. As I say, I've never seen such a big frog in all my life. He was absolutely huge, and he was definitely a frog because he jumped in the water and he was perfectly happy in the water. And as far as I know, toads don't stay in the water. They come out of the water and live on land. So they like living in swampy, boggy bits. We've got quite a few toads around here. I was listening to them last week go roar across the field. So, and they were answering each other as well. There was 2 or 3 answering each other. We weren't sure if they were woodpeckers or toads. But yeah, they did definitely sound different than the woodpeckers. But yeah, it's all been happening around here. The wagtail came back last weekend. I'm waiting, anticipating the day that the swallows return, because that means they'll bring with them the warmer weather. But it also means they'll bring with them the midges as well. So I'm not looking forward to that, being able to go in the garden and getting bitten to bits by the midges. So yeah, anyway, I'm going to love you and leave you, and I will see you soon. If you haven't already subscribed to my video, please do hit that subscribe button and the notification bell next door, and it will let you know when I upload new videos to my channel, and will keep you up to date with what's going on here. And if you hit the thumbs up button as well, that like button, it will tell YouTube that you like my videos, and YouTube will share them for me so I don't have to. So all that being said, thank you for joining me today, and I will see you next time. And take care. Bye for now. Bye bye.